and welcome to the 171 Cedar Art Center Houghton Gallery. I'm here today with Jessi Moore. We're delighted to welcome Jessi to Corning, to 171. She spent a lot of time in Corning before, and I'll let her tell you a little bit about that. But she's here with us today from Brooklyn, New York, and she's brought her latest body of work with her to display at the gallery for the next 2 months. So we're very excited about that. Jessi, I'd really like to ask you some questions. I'm excited that you're here, and I know that you have a following in Corning, New York, and you've worked with a number of the glass artists here in Corning. So I just want to welcome you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Corning has I was here for 6 years, and I worked at the studio of the Corning Museum of Glass, and I still know a lot of people in sort of the surrounding area, so it's really great to be back and kind of see everyone.
Well, we just think it's wonderful to have you here and be part of the community once more. You know, I know that the global glass community, there's a lot of connectedness, even when people aren't together. So this is a real treat to have you back, and I know a number of your former co-workers and artist friends are going to be here to see your work, as well as a number of people from the Corning community as well. Can you tell us a little bit about this body of work that you brought with you?
Sure, yeah. So what's in this exhibition is a combination of blown glass and what's called pate verre. So blown glass is probably what is most familiar to people that are outside of the glass community. It's sort of really dynamic, sort of performative stuff that you would see in a hot glass show. So there is some work that's blown, but most of the wall work is done with something called pate verre, which is a little bit more niche. So pate verre is French for piece de glace. And all of the work here is done by sort of taking small granules of glass and mixing them with a binding material and applying them to a mold. So sort of very carefully placing different colors, which is what you see with the color blending. That's very unique for pate verre. And then once the glass is placed into a mold, it goes into a kiln where it's heated up slowly so that all of those little pieces of glass become sort of one big piece of glass, but they still retain their texture and sort of the quality of containing the light as opposed to be transmitting the light, which is more what you get with blown glass.
Right, and I'm a watercolor artist, so to me, your pate verre is very beautiful, and it almost feels like a watercolor blending of the colors that you've placed.
Yeah, they are very much sort of painting with glass, I agree. And I think one of the interesting qualities for me with sort of that blending is that space between the two colors, which I was really interested in sort of capturing a lot of the work in this. And also with the new blown work as well, there's some sort of fading of colors. I'm really interested in sort of blending, there's a few pieces that are done with a white color that's sort of pushing the white into clear. So that sort of blending is really interesting to me with blown glass as well.
Well, and you've got some examples sitting right here, your cloud piece or series. Can you talk about these pieces a little bit?
So these cloud containers they're blown glass, and then the edges finish to have sort of this sort of wave effect so that they sort of also blend into the air. And with these, I was really sort of thinking about well, what would it be like to sort of capture the sort of ethereal quality of a cloud? What would it look like if you could contain a cloud?
It does look like that. It almost looks like you sort of got the wisps of the clouds, and they're held somehow in these beautiful bubbles in a sense.
And then these also sort of have a little bit of a quality, a kinetic quality. So they sit just right on the very, very bottom of the bowl. So they roll. They won't tip over.
Right.
For more than half of the sphere.
But there's a little movement to them. Yeah, that's very interesting. And you need to see these close up to really, really be able to appreciate them, I think. It's a little small on the video that you're watching today, but I think you would absolutely appreciate all that went into these by coming to see the exhibit. Another thing, so we're both kind of wearing halos from where we're sitting, and we thought that was kind of fun. But can you talk to us about the pate verre pieces?
So these pieces behind me, I've sort of titled Topo Verre, which is a play on the French word for glass, and then topography, because they have this sort of matte-like quality, or sort of this textural sort of movement to them, which I think is really interesting. So these for me were mostly about sort of like, again, that color blending that's so important to me, that sort of like imperceivable sort of mixing of colors that we see in nature all the time. And then also sort of about maybe mapping, a lot of my work is also kind of about like memory and sort of retaining things that have happened in the past and how that sort of interplays into the way that you experience the present.
So a sense of place.
Yeah, I think that, maps are a really excellent sort of metaphor for the way that we experience like memory.
Right, and this is a topographical map almost. Yeah, so these remind me of maybe the surface of the moon, which you haven't visited, but I've hiked in Haleakala, so working in a crater and seeing that kind of texture. Very interesting. So what is your inspiration for the work that is in the gallery right now?
Yeah, I think that, for me, inspiration comes from a lot of different places, but with this body of work, I'm very much sort of hanging off of like using personal sort of like memories based in place and based in sort of experiences. So a lot of what you're seeing is like created off of photographs that I've taken or sort of like hinging on memories that I've had. So I think that that's sort of like, that's where my inspiration comes from. It's sort of like, stuff that's happened in the past and then sort of recreating it in a way that's a little bit distorted or a little bit sort of pixelated.
Sort of a dreamlike quality.
Yeah, exactly. Although I hope that like the way, they are my memories, but I hope that there is at least a little bit of universality to them. It's like we all experience clouds, we all have sort of these like photos on our phone of like beautiful sunsets that we've seen or something like that. So, I like, while it is very personal, I hope that it does also sort of spark something for the viewer.
Great. And you've got some pieces that are really unique, I think, in that there's an interior piece and then an outer piece that covers them that is almost cloud-like.
Yeah.
And it works with the title of your exhibit. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. So the bloom work is, they're these sort of containers. So they have a top, a lid, and then something inside of the container. And so with those, I was, again, kind of like with the cloud containers, I was like, what would it look like if you could actually hold on to like the physicality of a memory? So inside of each of these domes, there's something that for me sort of sparks something from the past. But like done in a way where it's not like so specific that it should only apply to me. So.
Well, I think, and you mentioned, there's some universal application for common memories and common places, and by that I don't mean shared.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think it's going to speak to everyone who comes to see your exhibition. So you spent 6 years in Corning, so there's both inspiration with glass. There's a lot of perspiration sometimes.
Yeah, that's true, especially in the summer.
Right, but also learning from both fellow glass artists and from teachers that you've had. Can you point to some of the people locally that you are either close to still today or that you've learned from the past?
Yeah, locally. Okay, so let's see. Stephen Brucker would be a really excellent example of a glass artist that I find to be really inspirational. I love how delicate and sort of intimate his work is, at least some of it. It's a very sort of like pulls you in and it's just like really exceptional. And of course, like the studio brings in all kinds of like national and international artists. So Alicia Lemay is a artist working on the West Coast who does a lot of pate verre as well. And so she's who I studied with back when I learned how to do this technique. So she's a really incredible artist as well. And of course there's like kind of everybody around the studio who there's just so many incredible artists. Yeah.
Well, and Stephen Brucker is a flame worker, mostly, and so that's a very different type of work than you do.
Yeah.
But knowing his work, I can see the relationship, and some of it's in the sort of, I don't know, as I look around the gallery, it feels like light, and when I say that, I mean both in terms of light. We talked about pastels yesterday. Light against the glass, but also sort of a feeling of weightlessness.
Oh, yeah.
in both of your work.
Thanks. Great. I appreciate that. It's so awesome to hear.
Well, we are so excited that you're here. I always ask, what's next for you, for Jessi Moore, for your art?
Yeah, so I think that I'm sort of moving more into the blown glass sort of realm. I spent a lot of time sort of post-COVID working really closely with another glass blower because you are in such, like, you must have somebody else to help you blow glass.
Right.
But
so post shutdown.
Yeah, post shutdown. Yeah. So kind of COVID, and like really sort of like only working with one person and really sort of focusing in on the technique is very like sort of cathartic for me. And so I think that moving forward, you're going to see more sort of blown glass and more. I find the sort of fitting of objects together for containment really interesting right now. So I suspect that the next thing will be sort of more sort of like vessel based, but also like non-functional. Like these are non-functional.
Yeah. We can't wait to see what's next. So I would encourage everyone to come and check out this exhibit and look at Jessi's art. Jessi, how else can we follow you?
You can find me on Instagram. So my Instagram handle is Jessi Moore, not less. A little play on words there.
And easy to remember, Jessi Moore.
Yeah, I hope so. There's 2 O's in Moore and only an I in Jessi. And then I also have a website, so Jessi Moore Glass. But as long as you Google my name and attach the word glass to it, you'll find me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being here with us for this exhibition. So the exhibition begins on September 17th, and it will run for 2 months. Follow our website, check us out, 171 Cedar Arts on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and you will see updates on the exhibit and the opening and lots of events and happenings at 171. So thank you, Jessi, for being here with us today. We really